Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Dr. Glenn is a clinical psychologist and former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leaving the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Before we get started, if you haven't downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
Hey, it's the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston with defeatyourcravings.com. I am here with John Chancellor from teachthesoul.com. How are you, John?
I'm doing well, thank you. And yourself?
Very well, very well. John is a friend and a colleague and a mentor. And I've known him for many, many years. He's someone that I go to for advice and perspective when I'm lacking it. And John is in the middle of writing a book called Words to Live By.
Well, it's actually words to live and work by. So it's words that will help you in your everyday life and words that will help you in your work.
I love it. And what I really love about the book is that it's not just a book of quotations, but it's a set of essays that gives a very practical explanation for how you can apply quotations you've probably heard and brushed over the course of your life, how you can apply them in a depthful way to improve your life. So, John, do you have another quote that you'd like to talk to us about?
Absolutely. And this is 2 words that will change your life. And if I told you that 2 words could change your life, you would probably be a little skeptical. But I do believe they're 2 words that if you use them and apply them correctly, will absolutely change your life. So I start the essay with a quote. Life is the sum of all your choices. That's by Albert Camus. So when I was young, I was fascinated by the magic words that storybook heroes could use to change things. There was all these magic words that the storybook heroes would say, and they would transform themselves. They would transform things around them. Now that I'm older, I realize that those tales were simply fantasies. But there are a couple of words that really can change your life. They have near magical power if you use them correctly. And the words themselves are quite simple. I choose. The magic is in how you use them. So I would suggest you start each day by saying, I choose, and then fill in the blank with something that's positive or something that you want to accomplish that day. For instance, I choose to respond to what happens today rather than react. So instead of the knee-jerk reaction to things that happen, you consciously consider the best way to respond to each event during the day. Another example would be, I choose to greet everyone today with a smile. Unfortunately, we often walk around with a frown on our face, too caught up in our own thoughts to take the time to smile. Changing that frown to a smile will literally change your world. People will react differently. They'll reflect positive feelings back to you. We have in our brains mirror receptors, and we reflect back things that we see. Easiest to see in a very young child. If you encounter a very young child, say 1.5, 2 years old, something like that, and you smile at them, their natural reaction is to smile back at you. If you frown at the child, they're going to look away, shy away, be fearful of you. So choosing to smile, walk around with a smile, that can actually change your life. Another example would be, I choose to make today special. It may sound like a platitude, but today is the only day you have, so make it count. Here are some behaviors that you can implement. Choose to be more agreeable, more positive, more grateful, more productive, more accountable, more focused. Or to be more aware of the consequences of your actions. Now, I think this is an excellent choice for those of you focusing on defeating your cravings. Choose to be more aware of the consequences of your actions. When we start the day with I choose, we're declaring our intentions. According to Peter Gallwitzer, an expert on the psychology of intention, forming intentions almost doubles the chance of actually following through.
Really?
When you actually state that I choose to do a certain thing, you double the chances of that happening. That's a pretty significant increase. Deciding and declaring how you choose to behave goes a long way to ensuring that it occurs. One of our strongest desires is for autonomy, to have control over our lives. No one has the power to control all the circumstances in their lives, but we always have control over how we respond to the events in our lives. Becoming more conscious of your choices should help you make better decisions in any given situation. By taking control of your behavior, you can make better choices, and in time, that will change your life just like magic.
I love it. May I speak at length about this?
Absolutely.
So first of all, a really clear and obvious implication of this implementation you can use for your eating is just to say, I choose to eat on plan today. You could declare your intention to eat on plan. And I did not know that you could double your likelihood of following through when you declare your intention in the morning. That's a beautiful thing. I wanted to talk, though, about the prevalence of active versus passive language when it comes to overeating struggles in our culture. Really any addiction, but overeating struggles in particular. It's common for people to say, well, the smell of the bakery triggered me, or my mom pushing the cupcake on me, that's what triggered me. The problem with that language is that although it assuages your sense of guilt, you're doing so at the expense of freedom and responsibility. It's an abdication of freedom and responsibility. It catches on because people feel so bad about the food mistakes that they've made that they can't tolerate the little bit of guilt that's really necessary to motivate them to turn that guilt into responsibility and pay attention to what the problem was, make the necessary changes, and then let go of that guilt. So, for example, instead of saying the bakery triggered me, you could say, I encountered a food stimulus in the smell at the bakery, and I chose to reverse my previous best thinking and best intentions in order to eat the black and white cookies, right? Or people will say, well, the binge happened at 4:00. It's no, I chose to binge at 4:00 in part because I encountered a pizza place, or, I was at my mom's place and she pushed this food muffin on me, but I chose to reverse my best intents and go along with it. There's a certain amount of discomfort involved in saying I chose or I choose. However, I think that discomfort is very much like the pain you feel if you touch a hot stove, where you actually need that to be painful for a moment so that you know where it is and how to make adjustments. You're not supposed to just say, oh my God, I'm a pathetic hot stove toucher, and put your hand down on the stove. But you need that pain for a moment. And so I think that in our culture, it's easier to sell the notion that it's not your fault, you're being triggered on every street corner, which is true, you are being triggered on every street corner. But there is still a space between stimulus and response in which you have the ability to choose. And I highly recommend rooting out every last bit of passive language and replacing it with active language and taking that pain for the moment. Because in the absence of doing that, you slowly begin to develop this notion of feeling powerless and helpless and hopeless. And it's almost like, I joked around, I fought a war with a chocolate bar in 1982 and I lost. You feel like the food has a hold on you, that it's more powerful than you, but it's not. It's not. We have the ability to pry ourselves apart from those impulses and those cravings and create this space in which we can choose. So I think this was very apropos and very relevant to what I try to teach people in Defeat Your Cravings.
Absolutely. You reminded me a few coaching sessions I've had where the client came and said they weren't able to achieve what they had promised they would do because they had to do fill in the blank something else. They had a rush job. They had to do something. They had an illness in their family. And on quite a few occasions, I've told clients that they can no longer tell me anything they had to do. They can only tell me what they chose to do. Because the truth is, you don't have to do anything. There was a client that said they couldn't do something because their child was sick and they had to pick them up to school. And I gently reminded them that you didn't have to pick up your child at school. You chose to do that. It was the right thing to do. I'm not disputing that, but it was a conscious choice that you made, and it was the right thing. But take ownership of it. You chose to do that. I totally agree with what you said. When you say I had to do something or I was triggered by something, you're giving up the control. You're saying that something else is controlling you. And I have often challenged clients on that. No, you have control. It's the choice you made, and that's what you need to take ownership of.
There's a series of mental events that occurs when you do take ownership, because when you say, I chose to, you say, well, this must be my priority. I chose to pick up my child at school because it was more important than the coaching assignment
Absolutely.
that John gave me. And that's perfectly fine. No one's saying that you're wrong for doing that. But the point is that it forces you to articulate your priorities and your values, and then you walk around in the world as someone who really knows what their priorities and values are, and it empowers you to make better choices going forward.
Absolutely. That's a very concise summary of that. So what I would encourage everybody to do is to realize that everything you do is a choice, and the better your choice is, the better your life.
I love it.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. If you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.